New law in Texas is requiring that educators offer students multiple perspectives when teaching about widely debated topics or even controversial issues. Now, this comes in light of a lot of controversy surrounding CRT, but one administrator is under fire in Texas after interpreting this as needing to offer multiple perspectives when it comes to teaching about the Holocaust. Take a look at recent coverage.
A school district superintendent in Southlake apologized Thursday night after one of the district's administrators advised teachers that if they have a book about the Holocaust in their classroom, they should also have a book with an opposing perspective.
We are in the middle of a political mess, and you are in the middle of a political mess. And so we just have to do the best that we can. And so we're going to go and you're going to do what you do best, and that's to teach kids. You are professionals. We hired you as professionals. We trust you with our children. So if you think the book is okay, then let's go with it. And whatever happens, we will fight it together. We will.
There's a lot of districts that are in the exact same spot we're in, and no one knows how to navigate these waters. I mean, no one.
Just try to remember the concepts of 3979 and make sure that if you have a book on the Holocaust, that you have one that has other.
How do you oppose the Holocaust?
Believe me, that's come up.
A group of educators were actually instructed to teach a Nazi sympathizer's perspective on the genocide that killed 6 million Jews and millions of others, including the disabled, political and religious dissidents, and gay men. A spokesperson for the Carroll Independent School District said the administrator's example about the Holocaust reflects the district's attempt to comply with a new state law that requires teachers to present multiple perspectives when discussing, quote, widely debated and currently controversial issues. The superintendent clarified, saying, quote, as we continue to work through implementation of House Bill 3979, we also understand this bill does not require an opposing viewpoint on historical facts, adding they would add clarity to their expectations for teachers.
No, Ben, I'm not surprised. I mean, when you think about how much backlash there was when people were trying to roll out CRT in schools, I'm not surprised. I think that this new bill in Texas that is requiring educators to offer multiple perspectives is a direct response to CRT, but it is absolutely absurd that we're hearing from not just new, inexperienced teachers, but administrators, superintendents who are saying, yeah, let's go ahead and make sure we have some opposing viewpoints to the Holocaust. Really?
Right. And so this is dealing with a level of absurdity that this country has gone to, right? Even in our media, even in our education, it's this idea that we should have some kind of balanced conversation over whether or not evil is actually evil. Whether or not murder is actually murder, genocide is actually genocide. And this is the absurdity of it. And it has gone so far now that the question of these type of conversations always existed. But now the conversation has been taken to the school boards, and they're trying to codify it and put it in our books.
You know, and I think it's interesting that just that audio was leaked, you know, where you're hearing inside amongst teachers this conversation about what they have to do now in order to make sure that they are abiding by the law. And could you imagine that as an educator, you're now living in a time where you could be in the class teaching history and actually be breaking the law?
Yeah, especially when you have to give this appearance of being unbiased, right? But I just believe, Georgia, that we should be biased against evil and bigotry and genocide and murder and marginalization and all these things that these so-called white supremacists are injecting into the national discourse and now trying to put in our education system. And I want to be sure, of course, our holistic education system is problematic, but they're trying to escalate it. They're trying to put it to where now we can't even question whether or not genocide is a bad thing without giving some kind of fake or faux balanced alternative.
You know, it's a sad reality, and it reminds me also of the conversations that were happening 10 years ago around climate change, and there was just this gross denial about the reality of our climate and how it was changing. And now here we are seeing all the ramifications of this idea that we need to offer an alternative to the truth, that we should entertain a lie. And I think that same culture is what cultivated the people who still to this day believe that Biden didn't win the election. When we live in a society where we oppose the truth with an alternative that people really believe in, you're going to have folks who are delusional, who are living in a quote unquote reality that is not based on facts or truth, but is based on ideas and opinions that in a lot of times don't benefit anybody and cause more harm than good.
Absolutely. Right. So this idea of offering a balanced alternative in the face of everything that we know to be true about the barbarity not only of the Holocaust, but the barbarity of chattel slavery, the barbarity of Jim Crow, the prison industrial complex, and the military industrial complex. There are no both sides to some of these equations that we're dealing with on a daily basis. And there certainly is not one when it comes to the Holocaust, and certainly is not an alternate side when it comes to white so-called supremacy.
I mean, these are the same educators who are still teaching that Christopher Columbus discovered America.
Yeah.
You know, let's just be real. You know, if we're offering an alternative to the Holocaust, you know, I would be really curious to know what these educators are offering as the other side to slavery. I remember at one point reading in a textbook when I was in 9th grade in American history that slaves, in fact, were not beaten because they were too valuable pieces of property. You know, and so if this is the rhetoric that we're offering to our children, America is headed for a very, very scary place in 10 and 20 years. This next generation that is being indoctrined with an alternative to the Holocaust.
Right. It's terrifying, right? And we're living in that reality a little bit now. We're getting closer and closer to it each day, where you mentioned critical race theory, right? Their reaction, them, you already identify them. The same folks who were supporting January 6th. The Venn diagram and the overlap of people who want us to talk about something to give an alternative opinion as it pertains to the horrors of the Holocaust. Those are the same people who marched up the steps of the Capitol on January 6th. Those are the same people who deny the reality of what happened to George Floyd. Those are the same people that we're fighting against every single day for basic human decency. And so the overlap between the absurdity of those people who think that there is some type of conversation to be had about the Holocaust and those who believe in the big lie, I believe it's probably 100% overlap, Georgia.